Good morning, everybody. Dave Schmidt along with Matt Nestor and producer Tom Warner. Everybody else sleeping in today. If you're out driving around wishing you could sleep in today, well, we thank you for joining us today. Hey, a lot of stuff happened this year, and I was writing them down, and probably one of the big ones in my mind, and because I followed them a lot because of the Rockford City Challenge, is the fact that Auburn wins their first Nick Penn title, played in two championship games, or two tournament games, ended up losing to the eventual state champion. Yeah. Also, the Gatorade Player of the Year and all this stuff was on that team. And what a success story that was from a coach who came from a school that had won two state championships in a row, goes to a school that hadn't won any games for like 4 or 5 years, and then to do that. So that's a pretty big story.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest when you look at things. It's a team that not only had that whole background of not winning and everything, but all of a sudden, coming into the year, they had expectations, which they just weren't used to. They've never had expectations. A lot of people looked at it and said that could be a team that wins the conference, and which is just odd to say. So for them to respond to that when they've really never had to deal with that before, too, I thought was very, very impressive. They had the early loss to Belvedere North, had to fight back, really corrected some things with the defense, special teams as the season went on, and did what they set out to do at the beginning of the season, which is always tough to do, especially when you've never done it before. It wasn't like there was a history of success you could draw back on. If Boylan responds next year, at the big season, we'll say, okay, well, Boylan's back. They've done it before. You couldn't say that with Auburn. It wasn't that Auburn was back. They showed up, and it was impressive. Of course, they had some great players there. You look at Parchman, you look at Lambert,
the big guy.
You look at some of those guys, and
they got more coming too.
Exactly. So, and I think that's a scary thing. I think when you look at it for the rest of the conferences, they've done it now. And until they do it, if they fail in some spots, miss some big plays, give up big plays, those kind of things. You always have that in the back of your mind until you get over it. So now that they're over it, that could spell trouble for the rest of the conference because they're going to have some momentum going now.
The culture is there now. Once you get that winning culture in your mind and you got the same coach, it's not hard to keep that going. It's easy to destroy that.
Very, very easy.
It doesn't take long to get on that losing trail, but to get to the winning side, once you get there, you like staying there, and you got to work on it. So.
And now they've got a couple of years worth of players, even if some of the freshmen or sophomores didn't play, but I'm sure they were at the games. They've got a couple of years worth of players now that will always be able to look back and say, well, hey, we've pulled this kind of stuff out before. So they'll have confidence and things like that when they get in those situations.
And he built his special teams up too. He wasn't afraid to use his soccer player who's kicked really good the whole year. They had a little competition during the season, and they finally decided on a kicker, and it made a lot of difference for them because they were terrible at extra points.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Yeah, when you can just kick that extra point, you don't want to get in that position where you got to start playing the 2-point game because, you miss a couple of those, and all of a sudden that can make some wild swings in your scores. So you don't want to get caught in that situation. And
plus, you don't want to lose that way.
No, you don't want to lose that way. But then even if you got a kicker, not that you have to make a long field goal necessarily, but if you've got that where you can, get in field goal position and actually get some points out of it too, you don't have to.
And they had that.
Yeah, you don't have to go for it for 4th and 5 on the 15-yard line. If you could actually kick a field goal instead of having to go for it, that makes a huge difference too.
And talking about another football story, James Robinson went down to Dallas. He played in your stadium.
Yeah.
And he played in the blue-gray game and did a good job. But him breaking the state record and then the little drama afterwards, it was kind of a unique year, but what a great running back he is and what he proved to do. And he took a lot of harassment, I would say, from a lot of the area community saying, well, he played at Lutheran and stuff.
Yeah.
He just is a good player.
A lot of unnecessary harassment. He was the story of the year, I think, especially when you look at football, because at the beginning of the year, you had the touchdown record to break. Then you're kind of following along for the all-time record, and he gets that, and then all of a sudden he just wasn't there for the next couple of games, and you don't know what's going on.
He must be better, which is good.
Yes. And I think it was just one of those things that once they found out the injury wasn't as bad as they thought it could be, I think it was just something that needed rest. So, he gets through with football and kind of rests until the All-Star game. I'm sure he's probably feeling better. But, I think he took a lot of unnecessary harassment. People are saying it's a small school and everything. And I kind of pointed to people, and not to necessarily directly compare the players, but that Glenn Bard West running back and what he did to Auburn. I think I had tweeted out during the game. I said, if you wanted to know what Robinson could do in the Nick 10, watch what this guy's doing, because very similar players. They're both going to play Division I football more than likely. Robinson's still undecided at the moment. But both are going to have a lot of success in college. Both are big, strong, fast players. Yes, if you put Lutheran directly in the Nick 10, although I think they could have competed this year, maybe he's not breaking records with Lutheran, but at the same time, if you put him like at a Harlem, behind their big offensive line or something like that, exactly.
Who had a great year.
And he's a bigger, faster, stronger than Brenton Shaw. Granted, Shaw's only a junior, but, you put him behind that, I have no doubt Robinson's going to run for a couple thousand yards and whatnot. So the only reason he might not have broken the record in the Nick 10 is just because it seems like most Nick 10 schools don't play freshmen. That probably would have been the only thing that would have held him back, and that's why he was.
Sometimes they don't play sophomores.
Yeah,
either.
Exactly, and that's why he was able to get it. Is not because of where he was, but just because he had the ability to play all 4 years.
Right time, right place, right coach.
Well, and people forget, man. He came in there at a time where the program was down.
Terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And Coach Mazzali will tell you that anytime you want to talk to him about it. So it's not like he was coming into some powerhouse program, that had just been running over. And they were also in a good conference, one of the best conferences in the state from a year-to-year standpoint, in the Big Northern. So, you can't say that it's just because he's at a small school and they're running over all of these other small schools, because they're in one of the best small school conferences that has a lot of teams with those big old farm boys on there, so you're not just going to push those guys around and run over them. And he went to a program that was down. The program is where it is because of him. And other players, obviously, too, that have been in the program, but he's helped put that program on the map now, where they're kind of running the Big Northern Conference, and so I think it's unfair, the criticism that he kind of received. For the most part, it was praised, but the criticism he received, I thought, was unfair.
And when I tell people, when I wrote a story at the end of the year, was if everybody could do it, they would do it, and they don't do it.
Exactly.
A lot of small schools are playing football. They don't have guys that come out and do that.
If it was that easy, the record would get broken every year.
It was 7 or 8 years before that happened.
Exactly.
If he would have stayed healthy, he probably would have been in the top 10 in the country forever. The whole record. So
yeah.
Congratulations to him on a great career. He also played defense, too, and he could have played special teams.
And if he would have stayed healthy, the Lutheran season might have turned out differently as well. And
if their center would have stayed healthy.
Oh, that too. But they didn't use him as much in that last game. I'm sure some of that had to do with the injury. He wasn't playing defense at all, which I'm sure affected their defense.
Because he could hit on defense.
Exactly. Yeah. So if he stays healthy, maybe their season turns out different, because I do think they had the ability to match up with Phillips, who ended up winning a state title as well. So. But one of those things we'll never know. Next
year, the Big Northern will be the Big Northern.
Right.
Christian and North Boone will now have to line up against everybody. There are only 2 left from the East.
Right.
That'll be playing, so that's going to be interesting as well. Also, Rockford Christian this year won the state baseball championship. Yeah. They rode right through that. Rockford Christian has a tough time in football, but in their basketball, they did well. They lost to Elgin in the championship game of a tournament. I think was it at Harvest Christian? It was one of those tournaments. Anyway, they won the baseball tournament, the state baseball championship. That's pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah, it's very, very impressive. And they had a great run. There's a couple of games that they won, like last inning, too, if I remember right.
Against good teams.
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah. So it was a great magical run for them, and, to get through and do that. And that baseball tournament is just tough, because so much of it is...
And they had a lot of rainouts, so they played back to back to back, and so they had the pitching to match their hitting.
That's the thing I was going to say, and that's the tough thing is, how can you line your pitching up and those kind of things, and how has the other team been able to line their pitching up, because you look at those matchups, and, maybe another team didn't have to play such a tough team, so maybe they use a different pitcher, and you end up getting stuck with their best pitcher because they could rest him for a game, whereas you had to throw your ace out there because you were playing a tougher team to make sure you could get to the next round. So, that baseball tournament's tough because so much of it is about pitching and who you can throw out there. And
they were just so balanced, though. And they didn't have a lot of kids on the team, but they were so balanced.
But they had good ones, yeah.
Yes, they did. So that was a highlight. Also, our friends to the north, Janesville Craig, also won a state championship. Yep. So we do have good baseball for being Northern State.
And we've always had some pretty good baseball teams here. I think the problem is we haven't really had anybody break through like Christian did this year.
Yeah.
But we always get teams going to sectionals and are pretty tough outs once they get there. Yeah, just the first time in a while, at least, that somebody's kind of broken through and and gone all the way like that.
Of course, they had a kid named after Satchel Paige, Satchel Paleo. You know, he's named after Satchel
you
Paige.
Can't beat that.
His sister is named Maris after
Roger.
Yeah. So
a little bit of baseball in that family.
Their dad, Chris, I think, is a Yankee fan, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, sounds like it.
So it was a pretty good 2015. We got one more we'll talk about in the next segment that had a pretty good state championship run this year, but a couple of teams in boys bowling had great seasons this year. Hononegah ended up winning the state championship this year thanks to Brandon Mooney. He was third place overall. Harlem right behind him. They went back and forth the whole state tournament.
Right.
Jacob Nimps won first overall. That's awesome.
Yeah.
In the state of Illinois where it's a big deal. Boys bowling.
Boys bowling is a big deal, but I tell you what, boys bowling or just bowling in this area is a very, very big deal. I mean,
they got 5 more years at Cherry Valley for the girls tournament. Yeah, for sure. So
I mean, this area bowling is just it might be the biggest sport in this area. In all honesty, just so many top level bowlers in this area, especially when you go to the state level. We almost always have at least one team, if not 2 or 3 that are down there competing for state titles at the team level, individuals littered across the leaderboard. When you look at that, bowling's just big in this area. And Nimps was very, very good this year.
And so was Mooney.
Yes.
They all went back and forth and that type of thing. For the Nick 10 to have 1 and 2 end up in the state finals. Yeah. That's hard to beat that. You know? I mean, you can't. And girls bowling has done well over the years and all that stuff. Yeah. So congratulations go out to them. We want to forget them. That was a big highlight because when we followed that stuff, it was going on.
Again,